Okay, welcome Year 5-6 to maths lesson for Thursday, the 11th of February. Have a go at these arithmetic questions, pause the video. Okay, let's look at the answers. So 1 and 1/5, add 1 and 1/15. So you needed to find the common denominator of the fraction, so you needed to change 1/5 to have the same denominator as the other fraction, so it has 15. And then you would have multiplied it by 3, and hopefully you got 2 and 4/15. 45% of 880, divide 880 by 100, multiply by 45, 396. Or you could have done it different ways, like find 10%, then find 5% and add it all up. 4/9, take away 2/9, 2/9. 70% of 20, divide it by 100, multiply by 70, or divide it by 10 to find 10%, then multiply by 7. Either way, you'll get 14. 2008 times 20, 40,160. A half divided by 7, you can just multiply the denominator by the whole number, and you get 1/14. And then 2 3/4, take away half, so you could change half into 2/4. Take that away from 3/4, you've got 1/4, and you've still got the 2 whole. You might have turned it into an improper fraction first. That's fine too, and you would have had an equivalent answer. Okay, just a little bit of a recap now. So pause the video and see if you can answer these 3 questions. Don't spend too long in it. Okay, so hopefully you were able to remember something about what area is. So hopefully you wrote down an answer to what area is. So area being the space that a shape will cover. So we're talking about area in the context of shapes. And we're talking about measuring the space that that shape covers, the space that that shape takes up. Perimeter is what we've been looking at this week, is the distance, the total distance around the outside of a closed shape. And then what I wanted you to try and do was create your own perimeter question and show the solution, just to see how you are with kind of understanding some of those more complicated missing length perimeter questions you were doing yesterday. Okay, so today then we're looking at area. So like I said, area is the space that it is a shape is taking up, the amount of space that it's covering. And we measure area in centimeters or meters or millimeters squared, the key bit being that it is squared. Because when we think about area, we are thinking about it in the context of squares. So it's much easier if we have squared, and we can think about how much does this area, does this square cover? It covers 1 square. So at the moment, the area is 1 centimeter squared because it is covering 1 square. And that's where the square bit comes from. So if we had another shape that we did on this grid, so we've got one there, there, there and there. So with this shape, it's covering 4 squares, which means the area, if each of these squares is 1 centimeter along and down and all the way around, then the area would be 4 centimeters squared because it is taking up 4 squares. But the questions we're mostly looking at won't have the squares. So what you end up doing is multiplying the length by the width. So in this case, 1 times 1 equals 1. And this one, 2 times 2, will tell you how many squares it is in the middle. And if you're thinking something that reminds you of, it would be thinking of it like an array. So sometimes when you think, when we used to look at arrays, oh, I didn't want to do that. Let's go back to that. And then if we're thinking about arrays, we do this one. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So if I asked you to tell me how many dots are in this array, you wouldn't necessarily need to count up every single dot. You would count up the number along the top, which is 4, and the number down the side, which is 3. And then that would tell you how many dots, because you multiply those two together, because there are 3 lots of 4 or 4 lots of 3, and there are 12 dots then in total. It's the same when we're looking at area. It's kind of like an array in these simple shapes, because you're multiplying the number of squares across and the number of squares down. And this will tell you that there's 4 squares in total that the space is covering. Okay, so looking at it then in context of another shape, so there are 2 rows, 6 squares in each row, which means there are 12 squares altogether. So we're using our multiplication, we're thinking of it as an array, and that means the area in that the shape is taking up is 12 centimeters squared. Really important that we remember to mark it with the squared. And when we're writing an answer, it needs to show that we're talking about area by including that squared unit of measurement. Okay, so what I'd like you to do is just pause the video and see if you could tell me what the area, write down what the area is of these 2 shapes. Okay, so hopefully for this one, we found the area, so you're multiplying the width times the length, and hopefully you got 21 centimeters squared, and hopefully you didn't forget the centimeters squared bit. And then this one, again, we can just multiply the 4 by the 2, have 8 centimeters squared again. So you could imagine basically that there are those squares in the middle. So we know that there's 2 rows and 4 columns within it. So these are kind of our squares that are equal throughout the whole shape. So we've got 2 by 4, which means in total we've got 8 centimeters squared as the area. Okay, so this time we kind of got the area, but we want to find out what the missing length is with these 2 ones. So we can use the area to kind of work backwards and to find a missing length. And that in turn can help us find the perimeter. If we know the area, we might then be able to find out the perimeter as well. So pause the video and see if using this information, you can find out what this missing length here is. So pause the video now. Okay, so if we're working backwards, we know that the area is 72 meters squared. And we know that one of the lengths is 6. So something times 6 equals 72. And if we think about multiplication, the way we can solve this is using the inverse. So then we would do 72 divided by 6 to be able to find out what the missing length would be. And 72 divided by 6 is 12. So this length here has to be 12. And then this one, we know that the area is 17 centimeters squared. We know that one of the lengths is 1 centimeter, and we need to find this missing length here. So 1 times something equals 17. So then we can do 17 divided by 1, and 17 divided by 1 is 17. So the length of this shape is 17. 17 times 1 is 17. Okay, time for you to have a go now. So got some questions here where you need to find the area of these shapes. So pause the video now and have a go at these. Okay, and then let's look at the answers. So 2 times 2 is 4, 3 times 2 is 6, 4 times 2 is 8, 5 times 2 is 10. And then these two, 12 times 4, you've got 48 millimeters squared. And this one, 30 times 7, well, 3 times 7 is 21. So 30 times 7 would be 210. Again, meters squared. Hopefully you remembered this time again to put the meters squared with your units of answer down here. All right, and then goal questions. So pause the video again and have a go at these. Okay, so these shapes all have the same area. Shape A is a square, and work out the missing lengths. So they all have the same area. So what we know is that it's a square, which means all of these lengths, sorry, are 6 centimeters. And we know then that 6 times 6 is 36. So we know that the area is 36 centimeters squared, which means the area of these two are 36 centimeters squared as well. So hopefully we use that information to then find out that this length here must be 4, and this length here must be 12, because we know that 9 times 4 is 36, and 12 times 3 is 36 as well, which means then they would all have the same area. And this one, a rectangle has an area of 96 centimeters squared. The length of the rectangle is 4 centimeters longer than the width. Work out the length and the width of the rectangle. So we have a rectangle, it's got an area of 96 centimeters squared. The length of the rectangle is 4 centimeters longer than the width. So you could have divided it by, divided the area first by, so divided it to find the length. So you can divide it by 2 first of all, or so if you divide it by 2 first of all, effectively you're kind of working your way through the number facts that are going to make up the factors that would make up 96. So you could almost do like a factor diagram, T-chart, and then find all the different factors of 96. And then if you divide it by 2, it would be 2 and 48. And what then you need to think about is, well, is the length of the rectangle 4 centimeters longer than the width? So is 48 4 more than 2? No. So you would need to work through and find 2 factors that multiply together to make 96, but also have a 4 centimeter difference. And then hopefully you would have got 12 and 8, because 12 times 8 is 96, but there is also a 4 centimeter difference between 12 and 8. Okay, and then this one, so platinum questions, pause the video and have a go. Okay, so this one you were estimating the area of each shape, so you didn't need to work it out necessarily, just estimating them and ordering them from largest to smallest. So the order would have been B, C, A. So if you maybe rounded them up and then calculate and then use that to then estimate. And then this one, each orange square has an area of 24 centimeters. Calculate the total orange area. Calculate the blue area. Calculate the green area. What is the total area of the shape? So we can see that the orange area is worth kind of 4 of the greens here, plus 2 of those. You can kind of work out, well, we know that this area is 24, and we know then that what the size will be, because we need to divide that 24 by 4, which means that each side of the shape will be 6 centimeters. So we know that each of these lengths here is 6 centimeters, and then we can kind of use that to work out the rest of it. And hopefully you got, so the orange then, 2 lots of 24 would be 48, and then use that to work out the blue, which is 72 in total. And then green was 24 as well. We can see it's the same size, which means the total area was 144. Okay, these ones, so these 2 shapes have the same perimeter. The length of each side of the hexagon is 8 centimeters. Calculate the area of the square. So we know that the length of this side is 8 centimeters. We know these 2 shapes have the same perimeter. But then we want to calculate the area of the square. But we know that they have the same perimeter, these 2 shapes. So if the length of each side is 8, and there are 6 sides, it means that we know that the perimeter of this shape is going to be 48 centimeters. Is it 48? Is it centimeters? Yes, so centimeters. So we know that the perimeter of the hexagon is 48 centimeters. which means we know that the perimeter of the square is 48 centimeters. So we know the perimeter over here is 48 centimeters because it says up here that they have the same perimeter. But then instead of there being 6 sides, there are 4 sides. So we divide the 48 by the 4, which means that each of these sides will be 12 centimeters long, because 48 divided by 4 equals 12. And then if we know that each of these sides is 12 centimeters long, we can then think about the fact that the area will be 12 times 12 to give, hopefully, 144. And ideally, that would also have centimeters squared at the end as well. So an area of 144 centimeters squared. And then the last one, the area of a rectangle is 16 centimeters squared. One of the sides is 2 centimeters long. What is the perimeter of the rectangle? You know, one of the sides, so 2 times what equals 16, and 2 times 8 equals 16. So we know that the other side is 8. So we'll have 2 sides which are 2 centimeters long and 2 sides which are 8 centimeters long. Then if you added all that up together to find the perimeter, you would have 20 centimeters in total. 8 plus 8 is 16, 2 plus 2 is 4, add them together and you end up with 20 centimeters. Okay, so that's the end of our first lesson on area, and we'll continue looking at a little bit more in the next video.